Welcome to Hacker Hangouts, and we are discussing DEF CON's theme, Access Everywhere, which I don't know if it's a warning, if it's a promise. It excites me, though.
Is it a challenge?
I
feel like they didn't. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I actually do love the theme. Like, after reading it, but when I first saw it, I'm like, is that a privacy nightmare or actually a challenge?
Oh, my head went directly to does DEF CON know that if you put a challenge like that out there, they're going to end up with humans in places they shouldn't be at DEF CON?
Oh gosh.
Well, the theme said I should access everywhere.
Oh gosh, I am fearful for the stickers that Scav Hunt is going to come up with for Access Everywhere. Knowing what their table typically looks like.
Oh goodness.
And the amount of 3D printed appendages that they may be making.
I mean, they always have the whistles, right? Like they always have the giant bag of whistles.
Yeah, just for safety reasons that you can blow
for
into.
Safety reasons, of course.
But it's a great theme. My goodness. So Braden, who's watching right now, one of the things in the theme is talking about access and bringing you know what? I'm going to pull it up because there's two things which are super interesting here. This is one of the first times I have read DEF CON's, if I can get to the website, their entire theme document. And one of the things is they have like an entire style guide. Let's see if I can share this out. Oh yeah, it's great when technology works. They have like an entire style guide here of logo and fonts and colors. And something Braden taught me on my site as I was throwing it together was how much time goes into accessibility for fonts and colors and making sure they pop and making sure like all the links are the same color so that you know they're clickable. There's a lot of information. Not only like here's what the theme is, here's what it is, here's the goal of it, but it's a sweet document. So I was going to say the goal of this conversation is to go over the theme, talk about what it is, what cool ideas we expect to be there. I don't know what the badge will look like and probably some of the features. Again, totally guessing here. And then I'm going to get your wheels spinning. If you were going to submit a talk this year, what would be some of the topics that you would be submitting on?
Oh, for the theme, that's very interesting.
Think on it for a little bit before you answer.
Yeah. I'll toss out there right before we start, because you brought up the style guide. This was also the first time I've read the long form theme guide. In prior years, I usually read the theme and then I move on. And I was like, no, I'm starting to steep myself more in the longer form document. When we say long form, it's a whole 4 pages. You should just go read the whole thing. Right. But I really enjoy. I had that moment, like you were saying, with the style guide, and then you realize, like, man, somebody put some thought into this, like 8 months before the conference, and they spent the time to sit down and figure out the palette and what goes well together. Mm-hmm. It just makes me appreciate. The longer I go to DEF CON, the more I appreciate the art that gets made for DEF CON, and yeah.
It's funny you say that because I find myself doing the same thing and maybe a little bit of the magic of the talks has because, like, you know, we've talked about this before. It's like the first few years you go to DEF CON, all you want to do is just go to the talks. And then you kind of explore the villages. And then when you're an old man looking back, you start like sniffing the roses and appreciating the art and all the work that goes into even the details of the signs and the floor logos and like Mars. I always love Mars artwork, which is who does a vast majority of the art. I'm laughing at Braden's comment that I'm psyched with the theme this year. There's so many bullet points in my career. I just imagine Celebrity Jeopardy, like, my time has come, Trebek, where it's like it's so much. He even, like, it was funny. I feel like I should have paid him for like the 4 seconds he looked at my site. He's like, here's the 30 things you suck at on your site and that you need to fix, which are all CSS things, which was like, oh goodness. Wi-Fi Addict is this year a non-electric badge year, right? Here's what's weird. Historically, going all the way back to about DEF CON 17, I think 16, 17 were both like electronic years, I think. And then they started doing an every other year of electronic, non-electronic. And that theme kept all the way through safe mode. And then recently it broke where all we had multiple electronic badges in a row. And then we had the non-electronic badge, the diamond one that Mar did. And then we had like I think it was 2 electronic ones in a row. So I am
Yeah.
I'm going to make a guess here, and it's not based on anything else, based on access everywhere. I suspect it may be an electronic badge, and I'm going to suspect it's probably going to do something with Meshtastic, potentially.
Oh.
Because
So wait, is it finally Darknet presents DEF CON? All right, Gator, we figured it out. We know what the deal is.
Yeah, Gator's like, I will be making the badge. I don't know. Like, I don't know if they've settled on a badge maker yet. I know that stuff happens
no
really
idea,
early in. I don't think they've
this is all
settled on.
speculation.
Yeah, I don't think they settle on one yet because I know it's a pretty rush timeline. I know, like in years previous, sometimes they pick the same person or they get it a few years to. I mean, I know it. Every time we've talked to the badge maker, it is a tremendous amount of work. Like, and you have to pour your entire soul into the thing. And
I mean,
maybe it's not.
Let's
I don't
talk
know.
about this for a second, because like the past couple of years with Darknet, yeah, Gator said not it. The last couple of years with Darknet, it hasn't been a custom board. It's been Pi Zeros, right? And then with or something like that, and then it's customization around the outside of it, and most of it's the software package and what they're doing with the software package, which I think is a really great way when you have one of these large scale productions to go about actually doing it. Now, is it economical? I don't know. But it is a good way of letting people focus on the theme without having to dump a ton of time into building the hardware, if you will. And I think that would be cool if they went that direction. And like my opinion, if you had asked me 5 years ago, I probably would have been like, oh, that's a cop out, right? But now I'm like, oh, that kind of fits the theme though, because that makes it more accessible for everyone because it's a known platform. All the tools exist, all those things. So who knows? Maybe this could be one of those years, right? Could surprise everyone. Just to be clear, all speculation. I have no information whatsoever.
I'm going to step back the Meshtastic though, because Darknet effectively crashed the Meshtastic protocol. I mean, Gator, please comment on this, because there was so much going on. There was so many connections. It just overloaded and nothing would actually work. So I'm gonna step that back, because if Darknet by themselves crashed it, I can't even imagine 35,000 of these things just pinging off each other.
Like I experienced this when we did I think it was Darknet 6 or Darknet 7, or maybe it was Darknet 5. I don't remember. Whatever the one where we tried to do connection over Bluetooth, and that could just be like a random buffer overflow in the Bluetooth driver, like I found, right? So yeah, that could be fixed by now.
Yeah, Gator actually said it was a 100 node rollover 2 years ago, but last year was solid. I do remember playing with it. So I don't know. It's not. I believe it's an I thought it was an ESP32. EAP is what Gator says plus LoRa. I'm wondering if that was a mistype.
It's probably a fat finger. It's probably
ESP32 plus LoRa. So there is the potential there. I think you can even run it on some of the other badges they've had in the past, but I don't know. So there's that. Let's jump to the theme. I want to talk I'm gonna read this one off. The theme for DEF CON 33 is access everywhere. Imagine that we're building the digital commons from scratch. What could we do to make sure everyone benefits? How would we make it freer, healthier place to inhabit? How do we protect each other from the worst parts of the current system? Services should be usable no matter who you are. Services should be accessible no matter where you are. Services should not violate user privacy or security. This in and of itself is interesting. And I think it matches the theme so well, even in the world as it is right now, because who was it? Was it General UK? It was a specific country. I'm just going after Apple saying you can't do end-to-end security. Like, we want to be able to comes up all the time. We want to be able to backdoor your privacy for security reasons. And I think it's interesting because these things always seem in conflict. You have more and more, greater and greater access, freedom for all. And then on the other side of things, how do you keep it private?
Well, it's not just that either. It's, that last bullet point in Access Everywhere. How do we protect each other from the worst parts of the current system? And making it a healthier place to inhabit. The fundamental struggle, I think, with moderation on these platforms to protect people from harassment is the fact that you have maximum privacy. You are anonymous. The more anonymity, and this is a known phenomena, the more anonymity people have, the nastier they will be to each other. And so you have this natural push and pull between, we do want to kind of safeguard people from the worst possible things, but at the same time, if we enable maximum privacy, it's really hard to prevent these things from occurring or build a system that disincentivizes it without ending up with like a social credit system that, everyone would say is a Black Mirror-esque, right? Like that's not good either.
How do you think this theme translates to DEF CON for like the talks and the themes that we're going to see there?
I mean, fundamentally, I think the theme is rooted in software, or we'll say technology freedom or free technology, in the sense of free and open source, right? So when we say free, it doesn't mean unpaid; it means freedom. Users should have the freedom to do various things, and one of the tenets that people would say is you can't really have freedom unless you have accessibility, right? Like somebody who's trapped in poverty for a variety of reasons, you can say, well, they have the freedom to lift themselves up by their bootstraps, but if they don't have access to public education, they don't really have the freedom to do that because they don't have the resources to do it. So that's why we invest in things like public education, right? So this is kind of applying that more generally to, okay, we have this digital commons of a variety of platforms that people communicate on, and are they actually free in the sense that, we'll take an example of like the Fediverse,
Yep.
with like Mastodon and things like that. That whole idea is, well, if I don't like one person's hosting of this platform and the way they moderate, I can go start up a secondary platform, and it increases the freedom of not just the individuals to associate with individual groups within the Fediverse, but also the freedom of an individual to start up their own group or their own server and break it apart. It increases freedom in some sense. In another sense, it makes it difficult to moderate the entire thing, right? And protect people in that way. And so I think this is a very hard problem, and DEF CON does not shy away from hard problems. And so I think it definitely is a solid theme for DEF CON to make people think like, okay, everyone wants a solution to this problem, but who's actually freaking doing it?
I think the other thing I find, I think it hits at the same time, but when you mention like Mastodon and things like that, I love the idea of them. But practically every time something like this happens, there's the famous XKCD. There are 12 standards. Well, this is silly why we have 12 standards. I'm going to go make one which can unify all of them. And then the next frame is there are now 13 standards. Like every time, like even when the Fediverse Mastodon came out, like this is the protocol. And then I think it was Blue Sky was like, yeah, we're going to make our own, which we get to control. And then not control like the connections of it, control the protocol itself. And it's like, well, this is that now we're back in the same boat.
I mean, this gets kind of to the core of the discussion, which is mentioned in the theme document, which is kind of like freeing yourself from the enshittification of services, where enshittification in this sense means we have a service that's great and everyone uses it and it becomes a common good, if you will, common good in the sense of like everyone uses it. And all of a sudden it needs to be monetized because these things cost money to run, and then they figure out how to monetize it. And that functionally makes the system worse. And it's not necessarily just like, oh, we have ads on the side and that equals enshittification. No, enshittification is I go to click somebody's content and an ad pops up before I can access it, right? Functionally making the experience worse in order to pull money out of the system and sacrificing your privacy and allowing you to be tracked and all these things. And we'll call it what is it called? Surveillance capitalism, if you will.
I mean, the other piece of this too, though, is in a practical sense, when I had first dorked around with Mastodon, unlike Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, is I could very quickly, the moment I followed a couple people from DEF CON, immediately I got recommended a bunch of other people from DEF CON. Algorithm are working as it should. Mastodon, because it was very new at the time, it was like you click on someone, it's like, and where do I find everyone else? Like, where is the people? And in some ways, I almost feel like it was called the algorithmic anomalies that happen, or the algorithmic starts. Like, here is going to be super helpful. Here's how you get content you're actually interested in. And then it gets tweaked, and it's like, okay, well, here what was there was the company which was tracked doing experiments on users, but effectively there is. Either way, the point is that we can end up controlling users through the algorithm, intentionally, unintentionally.
Well, I'll put it this way: like, people talk. The funny thing is, people talk about the algorithm as this thing that we all kind of hate, but depending on the context, we actually enjoy it. And there is value that provides. So the example of clicking on one person, following them, and then you get a recommendation of like, oh, here's all the other people you might want to follow, and it's all the DEF CON people. There's value in that. The problem is like the value that you're getting out of that, or not the problem per se, is like the tension in the system comes from someone has to create the data to enable that to work. And there is this, I like that piece of value, but I dislike that someone has enough information to do that. And it's very difficult to create explicit permissions to enable that type of service in a way that, we'll say a 17-year-old can understand, because they just haven't been steeped in the technology or whatever. It's really difficult to explain, oh, if you click this link, this is what you are allowing without having a 50-page document, right? It's very difficult. And so the Access Everywhere theme, tying it back here, is it's like we want to be able to enable all of these types of services without sacrificing our privacy, without sacrificing our security, and having the freedom to control at what data we put into the system, while also making it as accessible and useful as possible. That's like that is a true grand vision of like, this is what does the perfect system look like? And that's how they start out. If we were rebuilding the digital commons from scratch, given everything we know now, how would you change it? How would you build it from scratch? What safeguards would you build in from the beginning that maybe weren't originally because we didn't foresee it? I think that's a cool theme. I think it's a really cool theme.
What excites me with this is it almost gets, again, maybe this is grandiose, getting everyone rowing in the same direction. One of the things that I've ranted at before with social media in general is it's so fragmented at this point. Like, it's very fragmented. There's a lot of duplication of services, and then everyone's competing. Like, TikTok came out, so now a bunch of other social media now is coming up with TikTok clones because TikTok's going away and it's coming back and all of this fun stuff. But it becomes remarkably fragmented. There's now tons of effectively Twitter clones. There was only one Twitter for the longest time, and then it was X, and now there's Blue Sky, Mastodon. Again, backend's different, but now everyone's like, what do you do? If you post on one, do you copy the same post to all of them? And then it's like, okay, now I'm communicating the same thing across everyone. It's gotten really weird.
Same thing happens with streaming platforms, right? Everyone knew the streaming platform was Netflix for a decade, and that's all there was. And then Hulu comes along, and we're like, okay, 2 is fine. And then Amazon Prime comes on, and you're like, okay, 3's getting up there, but all right, they all have specific content. It's fine. And now we're at like Paramount
Disney
Plus,
Plus,
Apple Plus,
Paramount
Disney
Plus,
Plus.
Apple.
Yeah.
It's
And
like
like,
so
and so we're all like, this sucks. Can we just have like cable back, but not like ads that are louder than the television show? Like, I feel like that's okay, right?
and I
Like
think this is
that's a core concept of enshittification. It's just like, if we don't, could you just not make the ads so loud, please? I feel threatened.
and I think that's what excite where I say rowing in the same direction. It won't happen. Maybe I'm a big pessimist. Maybe it will happen. I'll be an optimist. It will happen. I'm hoping we can all come together and there will be some core communication platforms, which DEF CON, as things go on. Now I'm jumping topics really quick, but I'm hoping we all come together in some weird way and we say, these are the technologies we're going to try for. Like, these are the ones we are going to try and shift our small community over to. And to be honest, I don't really care about anyone else's community for now. I care about ours. I care about ours. The hackers of DEF CON. We can unite here. First us and then the world. But there was something that caught my eye at the end of this. And I don't know if you saw it. It was right here. Last sentence. On the lead up to DEF CON 33, we will be releasing homework assignments that expand on the theme and provide inspiration on how you can help out, as well as information on what we are doing to live the theme this year. I would love if there was like a few like, hey, here's the push on how we're going to communicate this year. Here's the push on like the technologies we're going to use. Here's the push on these things. And all of a sudden, our little community can kind of grow on some of these platforms. Because some of these even, they listed off in here, which I've never heard of. Like Loops was one, which was a new one for me, which was for video. Pixel Fed, which is like an image, like almost, I'm guessing like an Instagram type of clone. And then DEF CON Social. So it's interesting that there's a few ones they're calling out here is that they're going to give a try. I'm wondering for DEF CON Photo Team if we're going to be have an account we get to post to this year.
That's that'll be interesting. And definitely, yeah. How do we work that into photo and to some extent video? Access and privacy. Like, I mean, privacy is always a concern, but yeah.
The theme.
Are we going to be like last year? Do you remember last year? Someone was just like, "We need the photo team bat signal so we can, call in a photo goon at any time." Is that what they mean by accessibility? No, I'm joking.
I laugh at Cannibal's badge. So Cannibal made one for the photo team. For anyone who didn't see it, it was super fun.
I need a new back.
There we go. Where it loads, it's just a bunch of it's great, but it also has the touchscreen where every time you hit it, it swaps it. I think there was one. I think this is the one image where the touchscreen didn't work because it had to rotate through these. Yeah, then all the other ones started working. Or I'm just hitting it. There we go. Now it's going. So like it was a great bat. It was but imagine like this if it had a little pager system in it. That'd be cool. Cannibal signing up. You'd be able to bat signal the photo team. Like, but I think like how some of this actually translates in it is very practical terms, which is getting having captions on the videos. Like they call that out in the sheet, just basic accessibility things.
Having alt text on the picture so that, making it accessible to low visual individuals.
Yeah. So there's some just actual very practical things. So going to what would be the topics, like if you were going to submit a talk, what would it be on? And I think some of the topics are going to be a little divergent from some of the here is my exploit, here's what it does, to more very practical things of here is how, like, gosh, I would love Braden to talk about, like, here is how you make a site accessible step by step. Here are the tools that exist for you to be able to test your site. Because he handed me a few, I've written down somewhere, which is here's how you test for color differences. Here's how you test for this. It's like I could see some very practical things like that getting pulled out.
Man, like not that I don't have any specific input in this personally. I haven't written these tools, but like in the context of some of the technical work I do Linux kernel development. And so all of that done is, it's notorious, right? There's the Linux kernel mailing list. The way Linux kernel development gets done is you send patches through email, which is kind of bizarre compared to like everyone else is used to working with GitHub and all these things. But the reality is, like, it just, for a highly distributed system like this, it just works, and it is and it prevents the consolidation of control over a particular piece of code, right? But it makes it really hard to start working on the platform. And over the years, people have slowly but surely created what I would call accessibility tools, things like a public mailbox, and the interface to it that makes command line access to patches sent through email a better experience, not just in a UX term, but in like basic fundamental access to this thing. So you're not just like reviewing patches on a browser, but have no way to interact with it. I mean, if somebody from B4, the tool, there's a tool called B4 that does a lot of this interaction with the public Linux kernel mailing list, mailboxes. Like, I would love to see a talk on B4 at DEF CON from the maintainers, or I think there's a thing called Hacker Mail that interacts with it. That would be a really cool talk on it, and something that's probably atypical to show up at DEF CON typically, but something that we're affected by every day. Like, all of us use Linux, all of us, and so it's definitely a very getting some of these people that maybe don't do or are afraid to engage with Linux development exposed to these tools might be a general good for everyone, right? So I think that would be a really cool talk.
I think one of the things I'm seeing within the offensive security side is historically, like, my goodness, like when I started, it was like using IRC to try and glean any pieces of information you can, looking at RFCs, looking at any piece of data you could to start getting access to, like, even basic tools. Like, I remember, like, there was like Cain and Abel and whatnot, which was like one of the first tools which came out which was easy to download, was easy to use. Like, that, though that thing didn't exist prior to like, goodness, when I started. And I think what's interesting is, as time has gone on, there's major companies which have started having education materials like OWASP. OWASP for the web, they're probably, I would say, the top for open methodologies for web and mobile, and they have some server stuff. But I'll be curious to see if there's a growth of more open labs. Like, you have like Hack the Box, and there's well, goodness, what was the other one? The other, there's they do the Christmas one every year, the other Hacker Labs one. And I'll be curious if more, we'll say, education materials start. I'd love to get more of like a Fediverse type of thing, closer to like Wikipedia, in the sense that we almost go back in time. We almost go back to where you can spin up a website off your home server, like, and share that data. In some ways, like, that's what Tor kind of allows you to do, in a little bit more of a privacy preserving way, where you can spin up your own Tor site. And they mentioned Tor in here, and there's another one too they mentioned, which Valid, which I haven't played with too much, but I could see going closer to here is the information, and I don't know, I guess I'm spinning it to, I could see a talking about some more radical changes on how information is shared between people, whether it's through something like Mastodon on the chat side, but doing something similar on the research and information sharing side, where you can do it more anonymously, you can do it more privacy preserving, and you can send it more to centralized places for people to access it, or distributed places.
That's a really good idea too. Although that kind of just sounds like email. To being real, like, it kind of does, like a public mailbox and a repository, and many copies of a repository. I think, like, that's the thing. Like, if a lot of these information sharing mechanisms at its core, if you were to strip all the specifics away and just look at how things get sent around, like email really is one of the single most impactful inventions in the past 100 years.
Look at Twitter. That's effectively a public mailbox in
Yep.
some ways. Like, it's just organized by hashtag. I think one of the kickers that these things seem in conflict. You have higher accessibility, you have lower privacy. Because even things like basic search, if you want to be able to search all Twitter posts, let's use Discord. Discord is actually, gosh, a Herculean, amazing thing, but it still kind of sucks in some way for search because it's a NoSQL database. So that being said, is once you get all these mailboxes in there, what was that?
Yeah. It's unsearchable.
It's unsearchable. So like, I think when you get higher accessibility, or even if you want to do privacy, all of a sudden, like, it's now remarkably difficult to find the data you're looking for.
I almost wonder if someone has done research into this fundamental tension and whether or not you could, and like this is like real nerdy stuff, like in a purely objective sense, is this perfect system impossible because of what you just said, where there's like fundamental design requirements for privacy that make accessibility hard, and fundamental design requirements for accessibility that make privacy hard. And so at some point like we could in theory design a perfect system for one, but two requires you to have an opinion somewhere in the middle where there is no objective perfect system in the middle. I'm speculating here, but I wonder if that is the case.
I would imagine all of these things we'll say they start with why. What is the purpose behind this system? Because if the purpose is for, we'll say, open and accessible information, then it doesn't need to be secure. It needs to be anonymous, or it can be anonymous, but it doesn't need to be secure. If the purpose is communication, then it needs to be secure. I harken back to like Meshtastic. When I first got it installed, Gator was kind of talking me through it. It's like I think it was by default, your messages are publicly readable by everyone. Like by default. Like, so if you send a message, don't expect it to be private because anyone can sniff the thing. And it's more for broadcast. However, you can turn on encryption, share keys, and then all of a sudden I can have private encryption between two different nodes bouncing across them. So I almost think that like, the moment you split it up, going, okay, well, the more accessible it is, the less secure it needs to be.
Although, like, think about that. You're like, you have privacy. Well, you have privacy in the sense that you have encrypted data, and so no one can sniff your data. But you may not necessarily have privacy in the sense that someone will eventually know who the message is going to. So someone might be able to identify Silk is talking to Gator, or at least someone is talking to Gator, assuming that maybe there's like an onion routing protocol, right? So they'll know Silk is talking to somebody and someone sent a message to Gator. And if you are, as I like to say, mononymous, the only person sending a message and the only person receiving a message at that time, then we know who's talking to who.
Yeah.
Right. So like that's a design difficulty, right?
Yeah, there's the whole option of sharding too, and then there's the whole option of jitter, where you just randomly send garbage messages just to create traffic. This is a weird problem I'm dealing with right now. So I'm creating. It's funny. It started with I need to be able to send commands down to an agent, to then realize about like 75% through, I'm like, oh, I'm just designing a C2 system. Like this is outflat a C2 system. I don't actually have like and then everything became easier. But it's funny because I started with, okay, it's all going to be stored plain text anyway. So what do I care about encryption? And I was like, oh no, I should do key exchanges. Well, if I'm doing key exchanges, might as well like do full private public key. It's like, well, if I'm doing that, and then might as well do forward secrecy, where I have like random ephemeral keys getting generated for every exchange. And now at one point I started questioning, like, what is the attack path here? Like, what is the threat I'm worried about? Because at a certain point, I don't even know what I'm trying to protect against. And I think that's where you start with why for all these systems. Like, why are we doing this? And I think that's what's great about the theme document. They start with, here is the why. And then you go, okay, what are we worried about? Like, not like, why are we doing this? And then what is the purpose driving it? And then I think you can start creating some of those systems and the talks and things that go along those lines.
It's just fun and profit, right? We're doing it for fun and profit. It's so funny. Like, I use that phrase so often now. I'm like, haha, I did this for fun and profit. But like, that really is like the fundamental reason why we do almost everything. It's either fun or profit.
that is a true, or in some ways, what I get to do both.
Yeah, fun and profit. It's not it's not XOR, it's and.
Oh, it's and. I'm looking at the theme. It is interesting because they really do break it down, kind of like usable, accessible, private, and secure. And they list out the technologies. I think the other thing I'm kind of looking through it is like, also it's such the logo feels like a departure from a lot of the other fonts. Like, this is very elegant. I'm excited about the black and white ball this year. It's going to be elegant. It's going to be fun.
It just makes me wonder, and sorry, it's very me focused for a second. It makes me wonder if I'm blind to, is there a Linux like village at DEF CON? Like, you want to talk about something that is accessible, technically speaking, relatively, it's not necessarily private, but like, and usable. The Linux is kind of like a paramount in the industry, right? Like, you can just go get it and you can develop it and you can hack it up. You can do everything you want and it runs the world, right? But it seems odd that there's no Linux village at DEF CON when fundamentally, like, if you walk around DEF CON, I'll bet you 70%, 80% of the people sitting down with a laptop are running Linux or some variant.
Yeah, or some variant. I could see that. In some ways, I'm gonna answer this. I don't know if a Linux village exists. However, when we were going through saying, here's the villages that we want to hit and we want to do video at, it was comical. We're like, okay, we can hit all the village. There's blue, there's red, there's like the data duplication, there's the lock picking, there's the social engineering, or the
ham radio,
the ham radio, and then you start going down the list. And you're like, around 50 or so, you're like, we're not hitting all of these. There's so many. So
it's funny. We've been going for 15 years now, something like that. And we're like, wait a minute, is there a village for this? I can't actively say no. It's kind of embarrassing that I don't know.
I think there's probably a working group. Like, or what they call the land. But then again, all of this goes out the window because whether or not a village exists is ridiculous, because there's like StickerCon that happens apparently, which I miss every year, which is just people exchanging stickers. And it's not like an insignificant number of people. It's not like 5 people come up. It's like 100 people that show up and throw stickers on tables. So it is entirely possible those things do exist and we just don't know about them. I'm curious about this homework assignment thing.
Yeah, me too. Right?
I would. I mean, it's interesting to me that even some of the communication aspects, like we have Signal, and there's other more encrypted communication. It's fascinating. So, like, one of the things we've talked about before is if we look back and then look at the current time. If you look back 10 years, 5 years, there's always things you look at and go, oh, we were so stupid. Like, why would anyone think that was a good idea? Like, I go back to my grandmother's time. She remembers going into the bank and pulling money out for her neighbor from their account. That is insane. But then I remember when I was a kid, HTTPS wasn't a thing. Everything was just plain text everywhere. All chats were just plain text everywhere.
Passwords barely existed in the early 90s, but computers had existed for 40 years. Like that. Think about that. That's insane. Like the access restrictions were physical prior to that.
Even SNTP, I remember logging into, because your email wasn't Gmail, Google didn't exist at that point. You got a Roadrunner email address, you got an AOL,
Yeah.
and you could just log into the SMTP server and just send on behalf of anyone. So
That's good shit.
Forward in time, we look even 5 years back, and then you go, what about now? What are the things that we're doing right now where we go, this is insane? How was this ever allowed? An example, like two-factor on phone numbers. We're gonna look back again on that and go, why? This is insane, because you just there's like the SIM hijacking and stuff. But even like Signal. It wasn't until recently you actually even had an ability to add a username to Signal, the communication platform, where you could add a username and share that. The only way, if you were at DEF CON and you wanted to communicate over Signal, was give someone your actual phone number. Because
phone number.
Despite many people, like not many people carry around a burner phone there. Gator, I'm looking at you. This is your fault. Telling me why burner phones. I love you dearly. But you had to give someone your real phone number. And I think we look back, even like we're talking a couple months since they did usernames, and we go, how did they ever think that was secure? Like handing your phone number off to someone to now, because I think organizations are moving towards, I think this again, the access everywhere are moving towards, you don't need a phone to be able to have Signal. You don't need to hand this information and give up your privacy for that. What things are we going to discover in the next couple of years? We're going to go, wow, we were morons for doing it that way.
The thing is I think it's not a matter of discovering it. I think it's a matter of listening to the voices that are already saying it. Because like if you go back 20 years, 30 years, I mean, yeah, mid 90s, 30 years at this point. Oh God, 30 years is mid 90s. No. Ouch. Yeah, you go back 30 years at this point. I'll bet beginning of DEF CON, I'll bet you there were people going, email's fucking stupid. Like, look at how easy it is to break all these things, right? And then it was just
Kaminsky talking about DNS.
Yeah, it's just a matter of about a decade before someone with money went, oh shit, this is a really good point. We should legitimize this idea, right? And pull it out of the counterculture and turn it into culture. I think probably those voices are already out there. It's just that the ideas haven't been socialized in the sense that they're not widely reported well enough in a fair light, if you will.
So with that, I'll make the wager. I will be curious how many of the talks this year focus on things that everyone's been saying for a while and nothing's been getting done on. And I would hope, instead of one of my biggest arguments against not a lot of the talks that used to happen. DEF CON call for papers is incredible. Like they have to search through thousands and thousands and thousands of talks and filter through them. But there's always this, here is this exploit. Here is this cool thing I did. Here is this exploit. And here is the past. Here is a thing that had happened. Here is a project I had done. And I'm curious how many of the talks are going to shift from, here is this thing I had done, previously done, something in the past, to more aspirational and say, here is where we need to be going. Here is what we have to do. Here is how we accomplish these things. Here is a problem that I want to run with. And I'll be curious how many shift from the past to now future thinking.
I think it's a balance though. Like you can't have all of the talks be aspirational in terms of like somebody gets up on a stage and preaches where they think it needs to go. I think DEF CON fundamentally is a show me conference. Like, okay, I don't care about your idea. Ideas are cheap. Show me what you're doing. Right. Like there's the book they started publishing, POC or GTFO.
Yep.
Right. It's like, great. I understand a lot of people have ideas about how to break stuff, but show me that it actually matters. And at that point, we'll publish your thing. I think I think it can't just be aspirational. I think it's sort of there's sort of a balance of like, yeah, show me the aspiration, but show me your POC.
I think the other piece too is it's interesting because I think Demo Labs has solved this, is going
Yeah.
from which is now the middle stage, which is show me your broken project. Like maybe not broken,
you have to
but like
do that though, right?
show your work. Like don't
Yeah.
don't tell me about your ideas. Don't tell me about the thing you did, but show your work. What are you working on right now, and how can other people help you? By the way, for people who don't know Demo Labs, it's some of them is like, here is this project I'm working on, but often it's like, here is this project which is 80% right now. Here's what I need help with. Here's ideas. I need your guys' feedback in this forum, and they do a lot of tool demonstrations on I need feedback on this thing.
It's a common problem in product development in general, where like you have an idea for a product and like a command line tool. We'll just focus on that. You're like, you get a lot of ideas of what you want and what is easy for you, but actually getting people to use it and giving you valuable feedback is so hard. And I think the Demo Labs is a perfect middle ground of, it's not quite ready for prime time, but we still want to be able to give these folks air to be able to get that valuable feedback from an attentive audience that actually cares, right? Which I think is cool. Yeah, like Demo Labs is a good spot for this. And I wonder how much, this is a good point. I wonder how much DEF CON as an organization has learned from running Demo Labs and trying to bring some of that stuff out into more of the mainline talks, and not having it just be a show and tell, but also a aspirational, like, here's what we want to build. Here's what we think is good. Here's ideas for you guys, but can I get feedback on this? And I think is, maybe that's kind of we're speculating a lot. Maybe that's how the Call for Papers group already has thought for a really long time, because we don't really have insight into that.
Yeah, man, goodness, it's funny, but I'm looking at Nickery here right now in chat talking about some of the some integration with Meshtastic. Integration is rapidly growing, but he said the Flock Camera Hunter to Meshtastic to Discord and Map is almost done today. I'm curious what that is. I just saw camera, and I realized one of my biggest distastes with all of social media right now is a very simple one. There is no Flickr alternative. Like, there is nowhere to store mass amounts of image, like just DEF CON images. I have years of DEF CON photos, which right now they're on the media server, which is fine. Anyone can go download them. There's no way to visualize those. And there is no social media that exists to host images. It drives me nuts. Like, it's just such a, like, maybe no one cares about photos anymore.
There's your talk.
I'm waiting for it. Is that my talk?
There's your talk. It's a good talk. It's just like, this is a hard problem. How do you visualize these things and actually run a service like that in a way that doesn't bankrupt you?
When it's a lot of data too. Like, it was
and
AST
respecting
cell.
privacy. I had a friend of
yeah.
mine. So I'm gonna toss this out there. I had a friend of mine who proposed this idea for an app, and whatever. But he was just like, I have this idea where it was just like, you were there or I was there or something like that. Where it was like, oh, I want an image hosting website where like you can put your face in and you can find yourself in a picture from a baseball game that you went to that you didn't realize you were in, but that's really cool. I want to see what pictures I show up in. And I was like, this is a cool idea. A complete privacy fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you instantly think, like, as a hacker, you're like, this is neat, but not good.
All the nefarious reasons of tracking everyone at everything.
Yeah.
But like, even just like to have my own album and go, here's the images. But like, so AST and hacker photos. I think what happened is it recovered the site, and I was trying to host it elsewhere because it's too much data. You have decades, and every DEF CON it's like 5,000 images, 5,000 times 30, whatever. It's like terabytes of photos. Where do you put them? Like, and I would love if
Internet
I can't,
Archive.
yeah, Internet Archive. Like, it's like at one point there, this is a weird problem. Is you can talk about chat and text and you want all day, but when we talk about like the history of DEF CON, the art, like I would like to think of myself as an archivist of DEF CON. And where do we archive data outside of the media server?
Yeah. So there's a recent, like, going to spin off of this a little bit tangent. Speaking of the Internet Archive, they're getting sued by record labels for recording records, 78s, that were only produced between like 1880 and 1950. And the format is so obscure and so old, not most people, the equipment to play these records is becoming increasingly rare. And so the Internet Archive went out and they digitized these records in order to archive them. And that's a really cool thing, but they're being sued because they're making available online. And so there's a whole copyright thing, and I'm going to leave that on the ground. But like, that's a legitimate archival thing. But then it's the same problem of where the hell do you put these recordings and then control access such that you're not going to get sued, or you're not going to, for whatever. It's a little easier with photos, a little harder with like talks and videos.
Mm-hmm.
Like, except I think your picture froze.
Oh goodness. Yeah, I'll fix it. Keep talking.
No, I mean, like, it's a legitimate issue, and yeah,
I'm still here.
I lost my thought. It's a legitimate
my fault.
issue. Yeah, no, it's a legitimate issue, and I think it carries over to more than one type of media. Like text, like you said, text is easy. Everything else is kind of difficult. Just in terms of the amount of data, but then also when you talk about privacy and intellectual property rights and all those things, we could talk aspirations. Archiving is a whole different ball of problems.
You want to hear oh gosh, I don't know how we didn't actually cover this one, but we talk about, here we go. We talk about, this terrifies me. I don't know why this has popped in my head. We talk about accessible for all. Services should be usable no matter who you are. Services should be accessible no matter where you are. Should not violate user privacy and security. You have, with the accessibility issues around vision, so you have, read the screen, text to speech, around auditory and all of that, you have to make it very accessible. Large language models, how do you protect it make it very accessible for people, but stop large companies from ripping through all of Twitter, X, all of Reddit, all through whatever the accessibility platform is, to stop what we've been talking about, where you can go, I'm going to search all the images available for this person. I'm going to search all the text for this.
If you divorce it from, like, let's divorce it from AI for a second. That's one use case. Just like generalize that a bit. How do you prevent someone from doing that more generally? Like at best, yeah, like more generally, it's the same problem. If it wasn't AI, it would be something else.
Yeah, you hurt accessibility. The way you stop it now is you hurt accessibility. You add a CAPTCHA. You add a login. You make it more difficult to access the information and put steps in the way. So how do you make it more accessible?
Fundamentally,
get rid of those steps across the way.
This is what I said at the beginning. I was like, accessibility and freedom versus privacy kind of have this tension, and I'm not sure the perfect system exists. By and large, the internet is still very free and open.
Mm-hmm.
At the behest of, it's still very free and open. You can just go and do stuff. Even, like, put it this way, you can just ignore robots.txt and do whatever you want. Maybe not legally, but like you can do it. Like you can just go do it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying to do it. Don't do that. But you can do that. And the only thing that is kind of keeping it held together is people being somewhat honest. And so divorcing it from AI, I think it's a fundamental issue. Like LLMs are just, we'll say, an extreme example
Data
of how
scraping.
you might,
Yeah.
of how you might do that. But like data scraping, like Google already did it with indexing the internet. It's the same
Mhm.
thing with indexing, right?
I mean,
This very
th-
similar problem. And but the use case and all that stuff, that's fine, whatever.
what's so wild to me is, as someone who grew up doing pen testing, or in my early career was doing pen testing and security testing and all of that, we were always very careful on scope and authorization. Are we authorized to test? Here's the IP addresses we're targeting. Here's the URL. And we were so protective of it. And knowing full well, if you were on the external side, your stuff is getting hit all the time, without any authorization. And then it was like 5 years ago, some major companies, like there's like Risk Recon and all this other, they're for like third party vendor risk management. And they legitimately just scan the internet and then post the results. And then you have to pay to get your results. And it's like beyond gross in some ways, because it's like, we're going to scan your external infrastructure, put your vulnerabilities on our platform, and then sell access into our platform so you can evaluate the third party.
What was
And the
Do you remember
legal
what that website was that let you actually
show,
scan the internet through
oh
the
yeah, you still can,
yeah,
Showdown. So there's
Showdown.
that, and that's like where that's like searching through like where these third party vendor risk management is like beyond that. And at some points we talk about internet freedom. It is hilarious to me that the amount of freedom which is available out there right now, most of it just hasn't got litigated yet. Like,
Yep.
it's just like right now there's these, and no one necessarily wants to touch it. So it does still amaze me the amount of freedom to, one, just scan and sweep through everything. It also, with the exception that they're still doing like, now you can't get static IP addresses is easily, that anyone can still spin up a website. Anyone can buy a domain for $10 a year, which I do think is cheap. I think for what it is, $10 a year for a domain, and then and you can always do all the cheaper ones too, which are like $3 a year, and then you can spin up your own website. I mean, whether or not anyone can find it is beyond me, but that is still like a level of freedom which still amazes me that has been able to be kept. Because DNS is the easiest one. Just like if that gets controlled, that everything starts to crumble, and that we haven't really found an alternative to that.
Yeah, I mean, they tried to do the DNSSEC thing, and I believe that's dead. Like the, which hurts. But yeah, by and large, like a lot of the freedom we enjoy on the internet is, I mean, you can say that it's controlled in some sense through governments, because we know that there are areas of the world where what we just described is not true, and so we're talking about it from a very American perspective, where we have that freedom and we don't really have a lot of heavy surveillance done on us as individuals by nefarious governments. Those governments exist, right? Like, and that is a problem throughout the world. That that's why the theme here says it should be usable no matter who you are or where you are, and that, like, Tor is a good example of, like, we're not necessarily the target audience of Tor. It's hard to use, but it's probably worth learning how to use if you're under one of those regimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of the point. I think, and I'll wrap it up with this thought. I think because of the nature of computers and computer science and software and large system design, this is really an unsolvable problem, by and large, but I think we can always be doing better. And I think that's the undercurrent of this theme of, like, let's do the moonshot idea of how would we redesign the thing from scratch so that we can find the pieces that we can do better today with the platforms we have.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I'm laughing for anyone who watches the stream later while you're talking about like national surveillance and we're given the freedom. I am grinning like a lunatic because DJ Jackalope has entered the room, and that makes me happy. So I saw that as you were talking. So like when I'm like smiling, like digital government spying, and I'm like, Woo! Like, so that
Hey, Miss
explains my
Jackalope, how are
lunatic
you?
thing. Hi,
Yeah.
Jackalope, you make my day. Thank you for joining us. And I agree. Yeah, we could talk about this for 7 years, but look, I just wanted a shameless excuse to hang out with Gowrie on a Saturday and live stream this topic.
With our
Uh,
friends. And also I enjoy the fact that you chose the number 7. It's a good number. Just 7 years. After that, forget all the other years. 7 years is long enough. Let somebody else take it after that. It's good.
with that, I would agree. I think it may be unsolvable, but that is in some ways exactly what DEF CON is about. Let's do the moonshot. Let's see where it goes. In short, though, thank you for joining us live on a Saturday morning. We miss you. Hopefully, we're going to get back in a schedule here. I think there's some fun things around the corner. Thank you for joining us. Gowrie, do you have any last things to share?
We're consummate professionals every Saturday at the same time. Definitely not.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for enjoying the time. And with that, hack on.